fell in love with a girl, but I didn't know she was going to ruin my life. I never believed in love at first sight until I met her. She was perfect. The kind of woman you don't just notice, but feel drawn to, like gravity pulling you in. Her beauty was undeniable, but it wasn't just that. She had a presence, something magnetic, something that made you want to know more. Our meeting was pure chance, or at least that's what I thought. I was sitting in a small cafe, sipping coffee and scrolling mindlessly through my phone, when she passed by my table and dropped hers. The sound of it hitting the floor snapped me out of my thoughts. I picked it up, and as I handed it back to her, our eyes met. There was a flicker of something, recognition, amusement. I wasn't sure, but for the first time in a long time, I felt awake. "Guess I'm clumsy today," she laughed, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. Her voice was smooth, confident. "It happens to the best of us," I replied. She could have just walked away, but she didn't. Instead, she sat down at the empty chair across from me, as if we were old friends picking up a conversation where we had left off. It felt natural, effortless. Within minutes, we were talking like we had known each other for years. Her name was Lila. She had a way of making me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room. She asked questions, real questions, not just polite small talk. Where I grew up, what my dreams were, what scared me. And she listened, really listened. It was intoxicating. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Everything about our meeting replayed in my mind. The way she smiled, the way she leaned in when I spoke, the way she seemed to understand me in a way no one else ever had. I wanted to see her again. I needed to see her again. And she knew it. We started seeing each other every day. She was spontaneous, always pulling me into new adventures. A late-night drive to the beach, an unplanned weekend trip out of town, breaking into a rooftop just to watch the sunrise. Life with her felt exciting, unpredictable, alive. My friends noticed the change almost immediately. "Dude, you've vanished," one of them joked. "You're always with her now." I laughed it off. "Come on, man, you'd disappear too if you met someone like Lila." But they didn't understand. No one did. She wasn't just another girlfriend. She was different, special. Still, there were small things, barely noticeable at first, that should have made me pause. The way she asked too many questions about my past, but never shared much about hers. How she seemed to know details about me that I had never told her. How she always seemed one step ahead, like she already knew what I was thinking before I said it. Looking back, I should have realized, some things are too good to be true. At first, everything felt like a dream. Every moment with Lila was electric, pulling me deeper into her world. I stopped caring about anything else. Work, friends, even my own routine. All that mattered was her, but dreams have a way of twisting into something else when you least expect it. It started with small things. At first, I barely noticed. "You know, I don't think your friends really get you," she said one night as we lay on my couch, her fingers tracing slow circles on my arm. "What do you mean?" I asked, half distracted by the way her voice wrapped around me like silk. "They just don't seem to appreciate you. You're always the one making the effort, right? Reaching out, planning things?" I frowned. It wasn't exactly true, but maybe she had a point. I had been the one initiating most of our meetups lately. "They take you for granted," she continued, kissing my shoulder. "I just think you deserve better." It wasn't like she told me to stop seeing them. She never needed to. Over time, I just started pulling away. Canceled plans. Stopped replying to texts. It felt natural, like I was just outgrowing them. Besides, why would I need anyone else when I had her? Then came the questions about my job. "Why do you let them treat you like that?" she asked one evening when I vented about my boss. "You're smarter than them. You could do so much better." I laughed it off. "That's not how it works. I can't just walk out and expect a better opportunity to appear." "Why not?" She tilted her head, eyes filled with something between curiosity and amusement. "You're too good for that place. You know it. I know it." I knew she was just trying to build me up, but her words stayed with me. A month later, I found myself questioning everything. Was I really happy? Had I just settled? The job I once felt secure in now seemed suffocating beneath me. And so, when a big argument with my boss finally happened, I walked out. Just like that. Lila was thrilled. "This is good," she whispered, wrapping her arms around me that night. "This is just the beginning. You'll see." I believed her. I had to believe her. But as I sat in my apartment a week later, staring at the pile of unpaid bills, I felt something gnawing at me. Something I refused to name. Doubt. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I just needed time to figure things out. Lila reassured me constantly. "You're not meant for a normal job," she said one night as we sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker. "You're different. You're special." She said it with such certainty that I almost believed it. But reality wasn't as forgiving as her words. Days turned into weeks, and no new opportunities appeared. I started feeling restless, frustrated. Every rejection email chipped away at my confidence, but Lila never seemed worried. "Money comes and goes," she shrugged. "Why stress over it?" Easy for her to say. She never seemed to worry about bills, even though I had no idea what she actually did for work. I started noticing other things too. The way she always had expensive things but never talked about how she got them. The way she'd disappear for hours without explanation. One night I asked her directly, "Lila, what exactly do you do?" She just smiled. That same unreadable smile that had drawn me in from the beginning. "Does it matter?" I wanted to say yes, but somehow I didn't. I told myself that love meant trust, that if I started questioning her, I was the problem. So I let it go. I let everything go. And I didn't realize how far I had fallen until it was too late. The cracks in my life started as hairline fractures, too small to notice at first, but one by one they grew until the whole foundation was crumbling beneath me. The job was gone. My savings were nearly depleted. My friendships had faded into distant memories. But I still had Lila. And for a while I believed that was enough, until it wasn't. At first the changes were subtle. She started getting impatient with me, sighing when I talked about my worries, rolling her eyes when I mentioned money. "Why are you always so tense?" she asked one night when I told her I needed to find a job. Any job. "You act like the world is ending just because you're struggling a little." A little? I was drowning. I tried looking for work again, but it wasn't as easy as she made it seem. I had left my last job on bad terms, and my resume now had a glaring gap. Interview after interview led nowhere. The stress kept me up at night, but Lila didn't seem to care. She started disappearing more often. "Helping a friend," she said. Then it was business meetings. Late nights, vague answers. The woman who once clung to my every word now seemed like she was barely present at all. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe she was just under stress too. But then, the fight started. It was always over small things. How I looked at her, how I asked her questions, and every time I tried to talk to her about us, she flipped it on me. "You're so needy," she scoffed one night when I asked why she was coming home late so often. "Do you even hear yourself? You've changed, you know that?" She was right. I had changed, but not in the way she made it sound. I was unraveling. Then came the final blow. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. The apartment was dark, silent, except for the faint sound of voices from the bedroom. Lila's voice, and someone else's, a man's. My stomach twisted. I moved quietly, as if making a sound would make it real. When I opened the door, I didn't have to ask questions. I already knew the answers. Lila didn't scream. She didn't even look surprised. She just stared at me as if she'd been expecting this moment all along. "Well," she sighed, sitting up, completely unbothered. "I guess this was inevitable." I felt like I was in a nightmare, my body frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The man beside her didn't flinch, didn't even bother covering himself. I expected rage, tears, some kind of reaction from her. But there was nothing, just indifference. "Lila," my voice barely came out. "What are you doing?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, come on," she said, tilting her head. "Don't act so shocked. You had to know this was coming." I didn't know what hurt more, what she did or how little she cared. "Was any of it real?" I asked, my voice cracking. She looked at me for a long moment before shrugging. Does it matter? That was the moment I realized. She hadn't just broken my heart. She had destroyed me. I don't remember leaving the apartment. One moment I was standing in the doorway, staring at the wreckage of my life, and the next I was outside, numb, my legs moving without direction. The cold night air wrapped around me, but I barely felt it. My mind was a blur, repeating the last few minutes over and over. Don't act so shocked. You had to know this was coming. Does it matter? I wandered the streets, my feet moving on their own. Every bar, every glowing neon sign felt like a magnet pulling me in. I didn't fight it. I stepped into the first one I saw, found an empty stool, and ordered a drink. Then another, and another. I don't know how long I sat there staring blankly at the scratched wooden counter. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. Who would even be calling me? I had no one left. Lila had made sure of that. I wanted to blame her. I should have blamed her. But the more I drank, the more I realized. This wasn't just her fault. I had let this happen. I had let her isolate me, convince me that she was the only thing that mattered. And now, what did I have? Nothing. At some point, I checked my bank account. The numbers blurred, but I saw enough to know the truth. I was screwed. Rent was due soon, and I had no job, no backup plan. The life I had built, the one I thought was stable, was crumbling faster than I could process. I ordered another drink, and another. By the time I stumbled out of the bar, the city felt different. The streets stretched endlessly in front of me, empty and unfamiliar. The people passing by were just shadows, background noise. At some point, I must have made it home. I woke up hours later, sprawled on my bed, my head pounding like a drum. The room smelled of stale alcohol and regret. The apartment was silent, but Lila's presence was everywhere, her perfume still clinging to the sheets, her clothes draped over the chair, her coffee mug sitting on the counter, lipstick stained and untouched. I should have thrown everything out, burned it, done something, but I just sat there, staring, paralyzed. The weight of it all crashed down at once. The realization that my life, the one I had built so carefully, wasn't just ruined, it was gone. And the worst part? I had no idea how to fix it. Days blurred together, or maybe it was weeks. I wasn't sure anymore. Time had lost its meaning. The sun rose and set, but it didn't matter. My phone remained silent, my fridge remained empty, and I barely left the apartment. At first, I told myself I just needed time to process, to heal, to figure things out. But the truth was, I wasn't doing anything. I was just existing, floating in a haze of regret and self-pity, drowning in thoughts I couldn't silence. Every morning, I woke up to the same suffocating stillness. The sheets beside me were cold, the air heavy with the scent of her perfume, still clinging to the fabric like a cruel reminder. I told myself I'd wash them, clear out her things, make the place mine again. But I never did. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her hairbrush still sat on the bathroom counter. Her coffee mug, lipstick stained and untouched, remained exactly where she had left it. I told myself I wasn't holding on, but deep down I knew the truth. I was waiting for her to come back, for my phone to light up with a message, for some sign that she regretted it, that she missed me, that she had made a mistake, that she wanted us again. But no sign ever came. Instead, reality hit me in smaller, crueler ways. My rent was due soon. I had no job, no savings left. The bartender at my usual spot had started giving me looks, worried ones, the kind that made me avoid his eyes when I ordered another drink. I had ignored the calls from my landlord, from my bank, from the few people who still cared enough to check in. And the worst part? I let it happen. I didn't fight, I didn't try. I just let go. Nights were the hardest. The loneliness felt unbearable in the quiet. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over. Every conversation, every mistake, every red flag I had ignored. How had I let this happen? How had I let her do this to me? No, how had I let myself do this to me? Lila hadn't forced me to abandon my friends. She hadn't made me ignore warning signs, or quit my job, or pour my entire life into her at the expense of everything else. I had done that. I had let her take everything, and now there was nothing left. One night I stumbled into the bathroom and caught sight of myself in the mirror. I almost didn't recognize the man staring back at me. Hollow eyes, unshaven face. A stranger. I pressed my hands against the sink, gripping the cold porcelain until my knuckles turned white. Is this who I am now? The thought made my stomach turn. I wanted to blame Lila. I wanted to hate her, to rage, to scream. But the truth was, the person I hated most was myself. I had let my entire world revolve around her. And when she left, she didn't just take herself, she took me with her. I thought about calling someone. Anyone. But what would I even say? Hey, I ruined my life for a woman who never really loved me, and now I have nothing left. How's your week going? No one wanted to hear that. So I did what I always did. I poured another drink. Except this time, as I lifted the glass, my hands were shaking. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than numbness. Fear, because I realized that if I kept going down this path, I might not come back from it.